All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Marla. I'll be facilitating the meeting today. I will read our slogan and guidelines and then our land acknowledgement as well. Eracism is the slogan of the group Erace, which was formed in New Orleans in the summer of 1993. We seek ways through and humility. Join us. Erace is an organization that does not espouse party, and we have no religious affiliation. We believe in the acceptance of all people and no personal attacks, excuse me, of any kind will be tolerated. We come with the intention to listen, learn, and not to argue. All right. I'll do the land acknowledgement, even though I think it says, oh yeah, here we go, land acknowledgement. We begin today by acknowledging that what we know as the United States is the ancestral and unceded territory of many indigenous peoples, and that there are many more nations and tribes that could be named here. Members of our meeting group today are on the lands of the Chitimacha and Choctaw in New Orleans, the Creeks and Cherokees in Atlanta, the Tonkawan, Lipan, Apache, and Comanche in Austin, the Lenape and Piscataway in Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, the Wampanoag and Nipmuc peoples in Boston, the Cahuilla and Mojave in Riverside, and the Lumbee in Fayetteville. We thank their ancestors, excuse me, we thank their ancestors for being stewards of these lands through generations and through today. We need to protect and honor the history and people of these places. Despite centuries of colonial theft and violence, we should always remember that we are still on Indigenous land and it will always be Indigenous land. Okay, I don't know what's going on with my voice all of a sudden. In any event, I think everybody here is familiar with the basic guidelines. I would ask that everybody keep themselves on mute if you're not talking. If you would like to get on the list to speak, just raise one finger and I will mark you down. Please speak in order. People will speak in order that I have you on the list. You'll get 2 minutes each turn. Just make sure you're respecting the speaker with no side comments and no personal attacks or name calling. If you have a clarifying question, when the speaker is finished, you can then raise 2 fingers to indicate that you have this clarifying question. So you would like clarification, that you didn't understand what was meant by, could you clarify, etc. Not to further the opinion of the asker, and it should not be a long monologue. Only 2 people are also allowed to ask clarifying questions per speaker. So before we introduce ourselves, I'll just let y'all know the reason why I brought the topic to the group. Several anti-racist educators that I really love and respect tremendously have often done workshops and so forth on feminism. And one of the things that I hear repeated throughout, is that white feminism ain't it. And reasons why feminism as we know it has never really included everybody. It has never really included all women. It has not included marginalized women, transgender women, Black women, brown women, etc. So I thought this was a really good, short but concise video that had some really interesting viewpoints and I think things to say. And I thought it would be a great starting point for a discussion about feminism. So here we are. I will call you out in the order that you see you, and if you could just introduce yourselves and then we'll get started. Phyllis.
Morning, I'm Phyllis. I'm in New Orleans. I've been coming to Erace since summer of 2008, and happy Mardi Gras.
Beatrice.
Hi, Beatrice in East Point, Georgia, outside of Atlanta. Happy Mardi Gras. Oh.
That was very Mardi
Gras. Coming to Erace since I was in New Orleans, probably in 1994, really early 1993. Glad to see everybody.
Glad to see you. Teresa.
Hi, I'm Teresa Robertson. I'm in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I've been coming since August 2022. And the reason I got my little lollipops is, I didn't think I was going to get my IRS refund because of Elon and Big Balls. And I got it today. Well, actually, I got it February 20th, but I only checked it today. So it's like, maybe I'll get my passport too. Maybe the federal government will still slowly but surely work. So those are my little lollipops because I got my IRS refund. Yay.
It's the little things. Thank
It
you,
really is because it's a little bit. It really is.
Richard. I think you're muted still.
Hi, it's Richard in New Orleans and been with Erace since the beginning in 1993.
Thank you. Louise.
Um, I'm Louise, and I've been coming to the meetings for over a couple of decades now. First in New Orleans, now in Austin. And Teresa, I really hope you got money, more money, like not just to buy lollipops. I hope you can buy more things than just lollipops with it.
Thank you. Reverend Larry.
Hi, I'm Larry. I've been coming to Erase since about 1995. I am your friendly DEI member. Good
Okay.
morning.
Maybe after you could clarify what that means.
Be glad
All
to.
right. All right. We can go ahead and open the list. The list is open and I'll take names down in the order I see them. And if you can't hear my alarm, let me know also. I guess I'll have to let you know. Not all at once. All right, Reverend Larry.
I'll just kind of start off with a question where in the film it said more men self-identify as male feminists. I'll just let to know what she may have meant by that. And that's just a question. Maybe somebody could get to it later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else care to get on the list? Louise.
Well, I'll have a pop at that question. I mean, I'm presuming it just means they're supportive of women's struggle and rights. Um, although, I don't know, it does seem like an odd thing to say, but I see it just as they're supportive, and will help and support and our allies. I don't know. Tell me if I'm wrong. That's it. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Phyllis.
I think what she meant was not, well, let's also first remember these are Canadians, not people in the States. I think she meant that more men than in the past were identifying with themselves with being feminists, which is completely possible. Something people may think men can't be feminists, but they can. But they need to not try to direct the conversation because it's not their struggle.
All right, thank you. The list is open. And welcome, Glenn. I'm okay. Reverend Larry and then Beatrice.
Well, I'll just say again, because the answer still kind of escapes me, but to the extent that men more identify as feminists, I don't quite get that one too. If you mean that men identify as possessing feminine qualities, you know, um,
Phyllis.
I would think from my perspective, I mean, I would identify with women being treated as women and not being discriminated. And being given opportunities that they are deserving of, just like men being given opportunities that they are deserving of. But I just have a problem with the term male feminist because that just seems to indicate that a man is on the feminist side in terms of his personality and character, and I would disagree with that.
Okay, thank you. Beatrice.
Yeah, I'm not really attempting to respond, but in a way I am to that concern. I think men who identify as male feminists are really trying to say they are part of the movement. They understand what's going on. We identify and so on. And what the women in the video were saying is they have to start by listening first. They might feel that they can say that, but they're not. It's not true if they understand what the women's issues are in terms of feminism, and they think they really can't speak over women's experiences. Those are some of the notes that I took. It's not a matter of them having feminine qualities, but that they feel they identify by saying the words, I am a male feminist. I am a part of helping with the movement. I'm supportive. But the women said that they really need to kind of listen first and not speak over the experiences of women. That for me is kind of an explanation. And I thought something else that I took down was that it becomes the responsibility of white feminists to learn to be more inclusive. It's not the reason, it is not the responsibility, please excuse me. Excuse me. It's not the responsibility of the African American or African female or a person of color to do the work. That the work has to be done by those who consider themselves feminists, to be more open, to be more involved in listening to the experiences and the lived experiences. So I found that important to talk about. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Phyllis. And then the list is open.
Well, first, I want to say feminism is the philosophy, belief that women deserve equity and equality. And it has nothing to do with the binary gender ideology of there are feminine ways of acting and masculine ways of acting. Because there's nothing wrong with a man having what would have been considered traditional feminine ways of being, whether it's just being sensitive and nurturing. That's a beautiful thing to find in a man. And there was something else I was going to say. Oh, what Beatrice was saying about speaking over, that made me, because I took a lot of notes too. So they said self-identified male feminists sometimes speak about what they think the struggle is and speak over women's experiences. And that has happened at Erace meetings by white people towards Black people and by men towards women. There has been a denial of the lived experiences of people who are speaking their truth in this meeting. So thank you.
That was perfectly 2 minutes. Thank you. Glenn, and then the list is open.
Yeah, I don't know I just come in late, so I don't know what y'all really talking about. But I know that a man sometimes has to bring his feminine side out. And then sometimes a woman has to bring out her male side. When I had to deal with my little small children, I had to bring my female side out. Now, when I'm talking to them as now that they're adults, I don't bring the female side out. I bring the male side out. Some women, and many women in our society, don't have a husband and they got children. And they better bring that male side out if they're going to have some control over them boys. So yeah, so sometimes we have to bring out different roles. That's the point I'm bringing out. I don't know about what the world is talking about when they talk about feminists, male feminists, but that's what I'm talking about. My statement I just made. That's it.
Okay, Louise has a clarifying question, Glenn.
So I kind of understand what you mean by bringing the male side out or the female side out, but can you just explain a little better what you mean by that?
Uh, when uh, when I was dealing with my little small boys I was dealing with, uh, I had to uh, watch my words I said because if I used if I say the wrong words, they'll start crying. But I had to watch. I had to be more gentle with them, uh, because you know, the emotions is not ready to just take on that the full force of how a man thinks, and so I had to lower myself down to reach them. That's the best I can say.
Did that answer your question, Louise? Okay. The list is open if anybody would like to speak. Okay, Richard and then Phyllis.
Okay, for on my end, it's been breaking up intermittently, so I hope I can get through this. I think one of the things that we haven't gotten to yet is the whole issue of intersectionality, and which we've talked about in the past. And I understand what the two women who are on the video that we looked at are coming from, and that's I think a pretty conventional view of it. And they spoke largely in the case of well, you said they were, I guess they would be Canadian African women as opposed to American African American women that we've often talked about in this context, and that being women and being a woman and being of African American origin is provides particular challenges when it comes to all the rights that should be accrued to people of any background. And I think there is, as Phyllis said, we can't pretend to know the lived experiences of any one of us here, particularly people that think of themselves as being intersectional. But I think there's also the issue about that intersectionality has its has, can be used in ways that are cynical when it comes to when it comes to giving people to advancing the rights that we all think that all of us should have. I'm trying, and I may need another 2 minutes to get to this, but there's a particular appointment that was made to the Department of Environmental Quality that I think folks in Louisiana may be aware of. This was a young African. Am I up? I'll try to come on in the next 2 minutes.
Okay, would you like to get back on the list after Phyllis?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, Phyllis, and then Richard, and then the list is open after Richard.
So yeah, I was gonna start off the way Richard did, that this article or this video, sorry, is more in my mind about intersectionality than it is about feminism, because there are so many different identities that people hold within themselves that intersect in how they are treated in the world, how they experience the world. If a Black gay woman versus a white gay woman, there are different ways that they are treated, and it could be based on any of their identities. It could be the woman, it could be the being gay, it could be the race, depending on who they're interacting with. And I think we can't put aside or dismiss the idea that people do approach their way of being in the world from their different identities and how it impacts them. That's it for now.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, just to continue again, what I wanted to do is I always try to bring up specific examples of the argument I'm trying to make here, and that is that recently our hard MAGA governor Landry here in Louisiana appointed a woman named Aurelia S. Giacomo as head of the Department of Environmental Quality. And this is the department that has a major impact and is often seen as having a life-changing impact along what's called the Cancer Corridor in Louisiana along the Mississippi River because of the water quality and the air quality that affects predominantly low-income African-American communities. The new head of Department of Environmental Quality is Aurelia S. Giacomo, who is a young African-American woman who was formerly appointed to the Fish and Wildlife Service under President Trump in his first administration. She has made it clear that climate justice is not even part of the vocabulary following, her governor's directives. She is, from everything I've heard about, the absolute last person you would want to try to positively affect the low-income African-American communities along the Cancer Corridor, which to me is a perfect example of how intersectionality in and of itself is does not mean that the person who is, in this case, African American woman, can represent the interests of people that look like her, which is why I abhor that expression for exactly the reason that I believe that Governor Landry appointed her. It's almost like an in your face. Here's your DEI for you. You want it? Here's Aurelia. She's about as big as you can get. So the point is that there are plenty of male European Americans who I can count on two or three hands that could much better reflect the major issues along the Cancer Corridor affecting predominantly low-income folks. So it gets back to that.
2 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like to get back on the list?
Not at the moment, thanks.
Okay, the list is open to anybody who would like to get on it. Phyllis.
So yeah, while Richard was talking, I looked her up, and the first thing it says under her career on Wikipedia is that she began her career at Monsanto. That pretty much says it all right there. And I don't think that there's any concept that I don't understand the way intersectionality or DEI is being used in this context, because clearly, if you read some more of this, which I scanned, that she's had her career not on the side of the environment, but on the side of companies and agencies who want to use the environment for greed and power and wealth. Anybody could do that. Anybody could do that. And it doesn't, her race doesn't make her exempt from falling into those traps in our society. Let's see, what else did I write about this when I took notes? This isn't something stated in the video, but is something I wrote down as a response, that the lie of patriarchy is that the traditional male gender roles are the most important and women's are inferior, and also that queer people and non-binary people accept this role, and because people don't know where to place them if they have a binary perspective on the world. Thanks.
Thank you. The list is open. Richard and Larry.
Well, in response to Phyllis saying that, that race knows no conservative or liberal limitations, I think the point here is that the whole, as I understand it, and I would think feminists would largely agree, the whole issue in many cases is about women and African women and people that identify themselves as intersectional having the same power and decision-making power as what's often called, the white, what is it, the hetero, as the majority European, quote, white community. And the fact here is that we've got an African-American woman who does have significant power. The head of the Department of Environmental Quality has significant power when it comes to decisions on water quality and air quality that affect all Louisianans and particularly affect low-income African-American communities. It's the whole concept of climate justice. So, I mean, here's an example where you do have, and it's not, and I know that some people talk about whataboutism and that this is just a kind of a fluke example, but it's a significant, I think this is a significant example. We've got African-American women mayors all over the country, women of, quote, women of color mayors all over the country that have significant power, and that they are intersectional in many respects, and they have significant power over the day-to-day lives of all citizens in their cities, many of which are predominantly European American. So I think intersectionality in itself is not defined by a lack of power. In many cases, it is a well-meaning effort to put DEI into practice, and voters recognize that. And in some cases, it's for good, but in too many, it's for ill.
Okay. Would you like to get back on the list? I don't know how to turn this off.
Not at this moment.
Okay, great. Larry, you are next, and then the list is open after you.
I've heard it said that feminism has never included all women, and I think especially Black women. And then let's see, somebody else said white feminists must learn to be more inclusive. Well, what were white women? What was their problem? What were they rebelling against? Who were they trying to come out against? It was the white male. I mean, they certainly, the appeal certainly wasn't to fight against Black people, Hispanic, or anybody else. Their fight was against those who were in power, which was the white male. They considered the white male as the ones who were trying to keep them down. One of the sad parts about it is when Black women join into that movement, and sometimes communities have a whole lot of problems because of that. The white women's problems were not historically the same as Black women's problems. Black women had to deal with the stigma of their ancestors being raped by white slave masters at will. And because they were not considered to be humans, but property, they had no recourse. And that kind of stuff, it is handed down from generation to generation. A slave woman, great granddaughter who may live today, she may not have experienced that rape, but it nevertheless creates trauma in her mind. So to that extent, she can relate to it. And in terms of intersectionality, I think that's more male and female. That's a biological issue too. And Um,
Would you like to get back on a list?
yes.
Okay. All right, Louise, and then we've got Larry after you, and the list is open after that.
I think, Larry, you were just doing what Phyllis was talking about, or Beatrice, sorry, I can't remember, about males always speaking, not always, but speaking for women and speaking about their struggle. Like, you're speaking as if you know what the white women were thinking. And yes, I totally agree. It's a different struggle for sure, but white women can support and listen to black and brown females. Um, I don't know. Sorry, my thoughts are a little bit mixed up, but so I'm going to stop there. Sorry.
No, that's okay. You can always get back on the list. Larry, and then the list is open.
There's a difference in supporting someone and identifying with their historical struggles. Um, if white women never had to experience, even from an ancestral point of view, if white women never had to experience being raped at will and being considered to be property, and to see their children sold off to different plantations, three sold to one uh, plantation and maybe two sold to another plantation, and you know, this whole attitude about, you know, you people need to get over that happened way back when, and nobody in my family ever owned slaves. That you know, there's trauma that exists in people, and when we see Donald Trump and Elon Musk coming out with this DEI thing, you know, the first thing that comes in my mind is there's collateral damage. Collateral damage is that white, black, brown people, and everybody else going to get fired. But then when they have to rehire, they're going to selectively choose to rehire the white people because their point in getting rid of the blacks would have been accomplished. And so there's one thing to support somebody, but it's another thing to walk in their shoes, to be empathetic instead of sympathetic. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. The list is open. Phyllis.
So I feel like, Larry, you're arguing against something that isn't stated in the video, and hasn't been necessarily said in this meeting either. That the point of the video is that white women have historically centered themselves and not included or reached out to women of other groups to support them and make it a bigger movement. And, you know, an example right now in our world is the TERFs, the trans exclusionary radical feminists. And I don't like the term radical feminist because I don't think they are. And J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, being one of those people who don't want to embrace trans women as feminists, as women. And I heard of, listened or watched a video this morning of a African American woman talking about the firing of Joyanne Reed from MSNBC and Rachel Maddow's statement about it, and how Rachel Maddow's statement completely centered herself, her feelings about it, how it was going to impact her. She was losing a colleague. There was no criticism of the system obviously in existence at MSNBC, because Joyanne Reed's not the first woman of color who's been let go. I remember when Melissa Harris Perry was on there and she was let go. So I think the point of this, and I like that this video was three women of color having this conversation about white feminists, that we need to make sure we're not excluding people from the feminist movement. We need to not be centering ourselves.
All right, thank you. Next, anybody want to be on the list? All right, Beatrice, and then the list is open after you.
I just want to totally agree with what Phyllis has said, but also Larry's argument about what I call and what people call blood memory. I don't think it is germane to this conversation, but it is certainly a true thing. It is a true statement. There is blood memory, and there is, although we did not experience the Middle Passage and the lynchings and all, it is there. It is the blood memory is there. So I want to support that. While I do say, of course, it's not germane to the conversation about feminism, at least from my perspective, feminism and intersectionality. And one a point that I thought was important about equity that that was made in this, that you're not taking anything away from people. And I think we tend to people legislate and talk about opportunities as if we are operating from scarcity. We are not. There is enough for all of us. And so the point that was made in the video about equity, just that there are no barriers to opportunities and the skills that people have. And it's not a matter of you're taking away something from somebody. And that is what I think is so unfortunate, when opportunities and the acquisition of knowledge or whatever it is held on to by certain people, and others continue to struggle. And I think that that for me was an important point that was made in the video. Thanks.
Thank you, Beatrice. Glenn?
Yeah, speaking of the white women feminists and the exclusion of African Americans, back when with this woman, they made a coin of her, a stamp of her, can't think of her name. But, back in her time, they was trying to get this amendment passed. The leaders of the white feminists didn't want to include the African women in there because they felt that it wouldn't pass if they included them in this freedom. Now, now but I also say that the white women didn't suffer like the black women suffered, but a husband could kill his wife because he was drunk and would get away in the court. Could kill his white wife, kill him, and they wouldn't prosecute because he was drunk. If she got a divorce, she wouldn't be entitled to even take the children with her. She just had to leave the house with just on the clothes on her back. So yeah, they had a reason to fight. They had a good reason to fight to get some kind of equality. But like the women discussed that they didn't want to be no part of this feminist thing because it looked at all white. That's my opinion.
All right, thank you, Glenn. The list is open. Larry?
Yes, and the struggle was all white, and I mean, if white women were to reach out to try to embrace black women, I mean, they would have concerned themselves with issues of black women. You know, my mother did days work when I was coming up as a child, working for white folks, taking care of their kids, cooking for them, bringing home $3, $4, $5 a day. If white women wanted to help black women, they could have picked up on that cause. And many more causes. And I think for black women to try to follow leadership of white feminism, that has been a downfall, I think, to our community. Our struggles are not the same. You know, in relative to this article, I think that whole dialogue was about 3 or 4 minutes long. And I've been at too many erased discussions where conversations drifted off into one's own perception that may not have identified with a particular title. So sometimes as we all talk, there may be things injected into the conversation that is as far from left field as right field, you know. So we have to be careful how we try to restrict and control a certain person's perspective. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Phyllis.
So the video was 12 and a half minutes, not 3 or 4 minutes.
Oh, sorry, that's not for you. That was an old timer.
Oh, I didn't hear it.
Okay.
And again, everything Larry's arguing is what was being stated about how white feminism has failed other women from the time of enslavement here to white women refusing to include Black women in getting the vote, to the, you know, not overwhelming support of the civil rights movement. We acknowledge in this video that white women have not supported Black women, and I believe that the reason Marla brought this is because she doesn't support the white feminist movement, not including others. And it doesn't mean there's going to be white leadership. It means the door is going to be open, and then different leaders can come in, and maybe there'll be leaders from all different races and groups who need to be supported. The reason I went off camera is I was looking for this book I have, My Grandmother's Hands by Resmaa Menakem, who's African-American. I believe he might also, yeah, he's a social worker, rah, rah. And one thing that he puts in this book that actually took me a little aback was that he talks about body trauma and the generational trauma that Larry was referring to. But he said that white people also have that because of what went on in Europe in the past. So I recommend this book highly. Sorry for going over.
No, it was like 2 seconds. The list is open to anybody who'd like to get on the list. Oh, I'm sorry, Louise, I think you were on the list.
Yeah, but I'm going to not be. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, Richard. I think you're muted.
Okay, I may be going off in a direction that's going to reinforce what Larry was talking about in terms of the lived experience of African Americans. But part of that is in the context of what feminists, what African Americans are looking for in terms of human rights. It's back to what we as humans all want in our lives, which is a fair play. So it gets back to us being human superseding the color of our skin, and in terms of our qualifications to talk about things that come up in racism. But to me, it's our humans on. We're human, and the color of our skin should come second. And of course, part of the issue is that for too many people, it doesn't. But I wanted to say, in terms of, I flat out dispute the fact that this is where generalities are, the old maxim that all generalities are false, and that, including that one. But the fact is, progressive feminists have not deliberately excluded women of color from, quote, the feminist movement. That's flat out false. We had a vice president, Harris, who almost became president. She didn't lose by that much. She had tremendous support from women who would identify as feminists and maybe not. And I think the whole issue of who considers themselves feminists is another discussion because, like the people who call themselves spiritual but not religious, there is that label of feminism that has a lot of baggage. But what feminists stand for is often, very much the same thing that quote white women or European women stand for, and African American women are 13% of the population. That's why you don't see as half in terms of in any feminist group. If you see 13%, you're reflecting pretty much the population of the country.
Would you like to get back on the list? That was the 2-minute.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, the list is open. Phyllis has a clarifying question for Richard.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I heard, so correct me. Did you say that white feminists have not excluded women of color from the feminist movement? Did I hear that correctly?
All right, I'll clarify that to say I think it gets back to using that kind of weasel word historically. I think yes, at the outset of the women's suffrage movement, yes, but I'm talking about, let's say, in the 21st century. I don't think there has been nearly as much deliberate exclusion as some people would like to say.
Okay. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Teresa is next, and then the list is open.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if I told this group
Larry?
before, but in July, I'm going to Ghana with extended family for 2 weeks. So I was so excited. And I wish that the one woman who was a Ghanaian immigrant would have talked more about her experience. But I'm going to read up on it just as soon as I finish my pharmacy tech studies. But um, Richard, I like how you took the historical perspective, but I was just thinking Susan B. Anthony wasn't trying to get black women on to vote. Margaret Sanger, I believe, the birth control pioneer, she was into eugenics. So I mean I don't know how much behind we can or exclusion we can be, but that I heard, and throughout this meeting I've been doing my quizzes so I could listen and do this, and I said, did he just say? And thank you, Phyllis, for asking that clarifying question, because I like to think that I can multitask, and then I was like, did I hear that right? We weren't, there have been people who say that we are genetically um inferior, and I just thought it was interesting that somebody who's
Yeah.
pioneering birth control would try to get rid of. Anyway, I think of that one song. It's like, what are you going to do when all the slaves are free? And you just have people who want to get rid of people who don't look like them. And I always say, especially to, whatever race you are, you're going to be the new N word if the rest of us are gone. And you can fill in what you think the N word, who that, whatever people you can't stand and you get rid of them, that niche is still going to be there. And if you don't have enough power and resources, you're it. You're it. It really doesn't matter. You're it. So mm, and I think part of what is happening now federally when people are indiscriminate. Was that the buzzer? It should
It
be about two
was.
minutes.
Would you
Okay.
like to
I'll
get back on the list?
No, I'm just gonna rant from here on out, but thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome. Larry, and then we have Amal, and probably time for a couple others, and then we'll do the wrap up. Larry?
We just finished what historically has been called Black History Month. And that should have been a time in Erace, ERACISM, erase and eracism, should have been fully embroiled in what Black History Month stands for, why it was created. Oftentimes, we're not dealing with the color of a person's skin, but we're dealing with a feeling of one being biologically inferior. That is what we're dealing with now in America. Donald Trump, all the right, white wing, so-called Christian nationalists, this whole DEI thing, is because Black people have always been considered less than. And because the Constitution said we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. So since Blacks were not considered to be men, to be treated equal, they had to be given another status. That other status was something less than human. So they made them out to be property. That's why a Black woman could be raped with no recourse because she was property. And this whole concept of white supremacy, it lives with us to this day. And I don't hear it being discussed on the national level as if there's a fear to say what it is we're dealing with in America. It's the rise of white supremacy, make our nation white again so we could take control. All these Black people and brown people, all these women, they're bothering us now. So we've got to clean house and come back and rehire those that we think are qualified. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Amal, and then we have Phyllis, and maybe time for one more, and then the wrap up.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, when I watched the video
Teresa.
and it talked about intersectional feminism, I think that one of the things we have to learn how to do is properly define words so that when we're having a conversation about a particular word, everybody's on the same page as to understanding what that word means. Because I think we're throwing feminism out there, and everybody, I believe, has a different understanding of what feminism means, what it is, how it works, how we physically see it operate in society. And I think that's where the misunderstanding may be coming in at as it relates to this word. What does it really mean? What does it look like in action? How does it operate? Who's it? Who benefits from it, or don't benefit, if for that matter. So, and then you throw the word intersectional in there. Then you have to understand how that relates to the other things that this word intersects with, and what the definitions of those words are. So, I think we're talking around each other when we don't properly identify and define words. And I didn't see those women on that panel in the video do that. They didn't properly define. This is what feminism is. This is what it looks like, and this is how it affects the world that we live in currently. As it relates to how I see feminism, look, I call feminism the white women's movement, because it has never historically included Black women. Now, when they saw that they needed power in their movement, then they opened up their doors to Black women in the late 60s coming into the 70s. But white women have never seen Black women as equal to them in this society.
All right, that's the 2-minute mark.
That's cool.
Okay, Phyllis, and then Teresa, and then we'll do the wrap ups. And I think it'll be a minute for everybody because I believe everybody has spoken. Phyllis?
Well, I wanted to say that, words mean different things to different people. So all three women sitting in that interview could have given their own definition, and they might have been somewhat different. I don't know if you were on yet, Amal, but we did have a discussion about the term feminism in the beginning of this meeting. I don't take in any mainstream media anymore. No CNN, no MSNBC, nothing that, in my opinion, a long time ago sold out. So I follow people on social media who I respect, whether it's on Instagram or TikTok or very little Facebook. And there's a lot of discussion about white supremacy, especially now, but not only now. And that that is the main focus of the current administration, and that we're in big trouble, all of us. So if we don't start to come together and have a movement against this across all intersections, we're going down. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Teresa, you have 2 minutes and then we'll do the wrap up.
Okay, so I like to posit the word womanism, which is credited with Alice Walker, and she described it as embracing the courage, audacity, and self-assured demeanor of Black women alongside their love of other women, themselves, and all of humanity. And um, since then, it's expanded. You don't even I know I don't hear it often that people talk about I'm a womanist or womanism movement or whatever. So I don't know where the movement is, but I do know that for 11 years of my life, I lived and worked outside the States, and I always felt that I did not, because I lived in countries that were more conservative than the United States. So my experience has always been that third category or that third gender when somebody was talking about, well, when you act like a man or you act like a woman or you da 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 da, and well, I go to a different country and clearly I'm a woman, but in those societies, it's like, okay, well, she's an American woman, which puts her in a different category than, the men and women here, far too independent as the standards of that country that I was living in, but still not a man and would not put up with certain things. And the thing is, the more and I can say without a doubt, the more conservative the country, the looser the men thought I was. That was their fantasy. They see movies and I lived in the States really most of my life, never been groped in the States. Not saying that it can't happen, but the most conservative country I ever lived in, that's when I got grabbed. And I mean, he grabbed between my legs as if you would imagine somebody snatching a purse or something, like a grab and run, because he heard me speaking English and I was walking in between two white women. So he knew that I was not from that country. Walking by myself in Egypt, they thought I was Egyptian, even with my dreadlocks. I mean, I have the skin for it. I'm not speaking English or whatever. And it's not like we were wearing clothes that were tight and revealing or whatever, but hearing that three foreign women, and I just kind of imagined that he just grabbed the one in between and then ran. You know, it was definitely a grab and run. It wasn't, you know, whatever. I mean, you still feel horrible. And even those women who got, their breasts grab and run. That's what those men were doing. They felt like they could get away with it. Egyptian women were far safer because, in that society, you respect women. They're not going to grab an Egyptian woman's breast. And I felt much safer not walking. That was the one country where I said I was safer by myself. You always think, oh, we're safer in numbers. No, I was safer walking by myself because even dressing in Western clothes, I wasn't speaking English. There wasn't a um, there was maybe not even a doubt or whatever. Maybe I was just this modernly dressed because not every Egyptian woman veiled,
I
at
think the
least not
two
when I
minute,
lived
I
there.
think it went off. I'm sorry. I totally lost you.
Right. But
I
my
went
point
to another place,
is,
but please, yeah, go ahead
right,
with your thought. That's
right.
okay.
I just wanted to say it is different in different countries. And when you're
Yeah.
talking about what is feminism, what are gender roles, it really depends on what country you live in. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. We can do the 1 minute wrap ups. Everybody will have a minute to speak. And I'll just start with the order that I see you on my screen. Louise, you have 1 minute if you would like it.
Actually, yes. And only to talk about Teresa's experience in Egypt, I also, many, many years ago, I was walking in Luxor in the the Valley of the Kings. It's the middle of nowhere, if you know it. Anyway, and I'm walking up with my boyfriend. My boyfriend is ahead of me. I'm wearing loose clothing. I'm, obviously trying not to be, of showing any skin or whatever. Anywho, out of nowhere, this Egyptian guy comes up and starts walking next to me and starts talking a little bit, and then realizes I'm English. Obviously, I looked it as well, but then he put his hand down my back and touched my butt, right? At which point I turned around and I smacked him really, really hard. And then my boyfriend turned around. He was like, "What's going on?" And the guy, the ridiculous part of it was, he looked at my boyfriend as if to say, "Look what your woman just did." He was like horrified that I just smacked him. And then and all my boyfriend could do was like, go away, and just pointed to him to go away. But, yeah, what the hell? They obviously think, oh yeah, Western woman, they just want to be touched. They just love it, yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to add that little experience.
Thank you. Larry, you have a minute if you'd like.
I think I pretty much said what I
Okay.
needed to say and what I wanted to say. Except I heard Phyllis say that we almost have a coming together now. Um, you know, sometimes there's two words that says it all. Sometimes that's too late. Sometimes when we should have been fighting for the same thing, we were still on different pages. And so I'm just kind of on the sideline looking at it all play out. And I don't think the end gonna be pretty. That's all.
All right. Thank you. Richard?
Yes, as usual, I got a lot out of this discussion. I'd like to respond to a couple of folks. First, Amal, and you've said before, Amal, that you want to be challenged in what you say and think. And I want to say something that I've said many times before. When you said, Amal, that that white women have not seen Black women as equal in this society, I would just, for credibility's sake, I would say what I've often said before. I would simply add the words too many, TOO, many white women. And I would certainly agree with you. And in that respect, I would say, that let's look at the abolition movement prior to the Civil War. That was significantly European American. I won't say it, if not in origin, it was, there was a significant amount of support for the anti-slavery movement among European American women and men. And in that respect, I'd also want to, getting back to what Teresa said and Louise, is that oppression against women of color is at least as bad in places like Afghanistan, many countries in Africa. We talked about female circumcision. This is not, quote, a white issue. This is, talking about intersectionality. Oppression of women is as significant, if not more so, in many countries that are not, quote, white or European American. It's a significant issue around the world, and I need to. I think we need to acknowledge that. And I've enjoyed the discussion very much, and thanks for being able to participate.
Thank you. Phyllis? Oh, wait, did you already go? No, okay. Yeah, go ahead. I'm confused. The screen changed. I usually write it down.
So I think that we can't forget, and I thought it would come up in the conversation, but it didn't, that part of the reason societies that had more of a matriarchal or matrilineal history or culture, the reason those aren't as prominent anymore is because of the Western Christian colonizers who came and imposed their view of male-female roles and patriarchal power onto societies where that was not the norm. and enforced that to make them submit. Teresa, I'm sorry you had all that experience, and I hope you don't continue to have trauma from it, or if you do, you have support for that trauma. So that's all I think.
All right. Thank you. I think I really am confused here. I think we have left over Amal, Glenn, and Beatrice for the wrap up. Okay. Oh, and Teresa. Okay. So sorry. Yep. All right. Teresa, go ahead. Try to follow the order of my screen. So
Well, thank you. I think this is one of the classic feminist discussions, especially taking it from the point of who wasn't really considered traditionally a feminist, and I do appreciate. I did like the fact that that they were Canadian. I was just like, well, let's see what they're talking about. That put a different spin on that. So, good job on choosing something that's a little bit outside the norm. And Phyllis, I know you don't watch Bill Maher, but I will tell you this. His first guest last night was a woman who may be the next Canadian Prime Minister. So if on YouTube you look at that one part, you may really like it.
thank you. Amal, you're next.
Yeah, great discussion. I still I'll take into consideration what Richard said as it relates to too many, far too many white women have never seen black women in this society as equal to them. And so I'll stand by that. Anyway, great discussion. I recommend that the young lady who was on the panel, I can't remember her name because it's a very uniquely African name that I can't pronounce. But she did a I don't know if you all scrolled the videos as you were watching her, but she did another video with Trevor Noah when he had his show, and I recommend watching that show because it was an interesting discussion as well as it relates to feminism. So,
Thank you. All right, Glenn, and then Beatrice, and that will be the end.
Yeah, well, y'all brought the feminists out of me on this discussion. Y'all gonna have to edit out Teresa's statement. That was just too much for my feminine ears. It was too graphic for me. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Beatrice.
Thank you for the video, and everyone, thanks for the discussion. Thank you, Phyllis and Larry, for keeping us reminded of the forward march of white supremacy, lest we forget. And I have just been involved it's 4 weeks every Wednesday. Ebenezer does something called Navigating Our World. And for 4 weeks, there was a theologian from Candler who talked about womanist theology and used the quote that you, Teresa, mentioned from Alice Walker. And so that was very interesting. But it's a good discussion that we managed to pull together. And I appreciate everybody's being here. Particularly, thank you, Marla, for choosing it. And we just remain aware and open and kind.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, great discussion. I don't have a whole lot more to add. I just took some notes down, just a few bits. Phyllis is right about why I brought this video. I do believe white feminism is not it. It's never been it, and it was certainly something I had to learn, and I'm continuing to unlearn what I originally, many years ago, believed to be true about white feminism. I will say, I think white women are terrible at organizing. And one thing that came up for me that I just thought about, and I've thought a lot about, is the the statement that was made about maybe white women not intentionally trying to exclude, or not, not all white women. And to that I will say, we white women are responsible for collecting all other white women. So we have that accountability. We need to organize better and do more with that. Perfectionism, as Monique Melton has said, also can intersect with white feminism, and that makes it impossible for white women to act. And she has talked about how perfectionism has a stranglehold on white women in particular, and that makes us passive. So while we may not actively exclude Black women, trans women, brown, etc., our passivity is, and our silence are very, very violent, in fact, and that is just as harmful as, it's actually more harmful, I would argue, than actively excluding. So I think that is it. And then, yeah, I think that's it. Anyhow, great. Thank you, everybody. We can stop the recording.